X-Pac 12360. Featuring weekly news, insider commentary, and interviews with superstars, past and present from the world of pro wrestling.
A new day is dawning for DX.
And now, your host, Sean X-Pac Waltman.
Joining us now, a lifetime entrepreneur. He grew up in Detroit, a huge wrestling fan, known for his fighting spirit, shall we say. He would go on to become the president of WCW, executive producer of TNA, and of course, the notorious general manager of Monday Night Raw. He has produced 79 pay-per-view events, generating over $300 million in revenue.
Damn.
And his book, Controversy Creates Cash, is a New York Times bestseller. Please welcome the host of Bischoff on Wrestling, Eric Bischoff.
Yeah.
Yay.
What's
Right
up,
back at you.
Eric?
Great to be with you guys. This is fun. I'm doing a podcast where I actually get to see the people I'm talking to. I feel like I've entered a whole new level of technology. I'm really excited.
You just did, man.
You never have to leave your house now.
It does give
I
it.
really like that.
Yeah, well, we can set a studio up for you, right? It looks like you already got a hell of a setup there, or no?
No, I'm actually in my wife's office in beautiful downtown Cave Creek, Arizona, a little place we called Casa de Cave Creek. But it's just a little office, and I'm just sitting here with my dog who's underneath the table. Hey, Stevie.
Oh, my God.
We're
Is
just
that-
hanging.
Is that the dog I saw a picture of a couple weeks ago? Oh, my God. That's one of the most beautiful dogs I've ever seen.
Yeah, she goes everywhere with me, man. She's with me 23 and a half hours a day.
Stevie
she
is a
doesn't,
she.
She doesn't jump in the shower with me, but other than that, she's in the same room
Stevie's a
with me.
she, named after Stevie Nicks?
After Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
Here's a little tidbit of information never before shared publicly. Jokingly,
Yeah.
my wife gave me a hall pass for Stevie Nicks
Nice.
because she knew I was a big Stevie
Me
Nicks
too.
fan. And it finally got to the point a couple years ago where she said, "Look, dude, you got to face reality. You're never going to be able to cash that hall pass in. So I'll let you get a dog, and you can name your dog Stevie instead." So I say, "Hell yeah! At least I'll get a dog out of the deal."
Nice. That reminds me of Halloween Havoc '96, I think it was, at the MGM Grand. The night after, it was either it was the night before Fleetwood Mac was playing at the arena. And I brought, and Kurt Hennig and I went, and it was great. It was phenomenal,
And you know,
man.
my wife, as a surprise, she got me a ticket to Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac about 2 years ago here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And actually, the ticket came from a mutual friend of ours and our daughter's, who's a backup singer on The Voice. And we got a great seat and got to watch, Stevie and Fleetwood Mac here in Phoenix. And honestly, they're not as perfect as they were vocally, 20 years ago. But damn, they are still so awesome.
It's
It was
still
such
magic.
a phenomenal show.
It's magic, man.
It really is.
Lindsey Bucky was Christine. I don't want to get off into the weeds. We could go. This is
No,
kind of
Christine,
Hey, if you
self-serving.
guys want
McVie
to talk
was there.
old school rock, we got to mention Hart and Pep.
Yeah, Christy McVie was there,
Oh, good.
and it's just, like I said, it was magic. It takes me to a whole different place. I could sit there
Yeah.
for 3 hours, and I come out of that, and I'm just like, wow, where have I been? I felt like I've been on a spaceship. It's really cool.
When did you?
And I
know-
was straight. I didn't even get high. It was great.
You didn't get high. I always figured you, obviously for obvious reasons, the beer guy and not so much the smoked pot guy. That was us.
I mix it up a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Oh, hey.
I'm enlightened. I'm enlightened.
Well, when you get back to LA, we're gonna have to get together, Eric. I missed you when you were here last time.
I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about my
enlightened
first
together.
medical marijuana card before this show's over,
please
and it
do.
has to do with a good friend of ours, Rob Van Dam.
Nice. Yeah, very good friend and a guest on the show in the past. Eric, I was thinking about where to start, and people have heard, about, the Minneapolis stuff and, going to AWA, all that. I want to kind of get right to when you really, after you started Nitro and, Lex showed up, and then not long after that, word started getting around in the locker room, Eric, that y'all were, trying to make plays on the, trying to raid talent. And, we started talking about that. And nobody had really ever thought about jumping before, and the, that talk started, spreading through the locker room and got back to Vince. And next thing you know, we had I don't know if you ever knew that he got everybody together for a talent meeting over this. And basically told everyone, you're not fucking going anywhere. And no one's allowed to talk to anyone in WCW. And that just, or you're fired. And okay, I'm just going to use one relationship as an example. Jack Lanza and Bobby the Brain Heenan, lifelong friends. And it just crushed Jack. He couldn't talk to Bobby. But did you know that happened?
No, I didn't know it. Certainly didn't know it. But I'm not surprised by it, having been on both sides of the equation, so to speak, and also working with WWE and having been in the position I was. It doesn't surprise me at all. I think it's one of those things that, as you pointed out, not a lot of people know that.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't know it until this moment, but it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah,
he's fighting for his life, man.
How many? Right, exactly. And he was already fighting for his life before. He was scrapping with the federal government. Just downturn in business and all that. And then so when you came along, that it ended up being a blessing in disguise down the road. But that was definitely threatening the life of the company. So
what's really interesting to me, Sean, and I talked about this, I think it was last week. I had Jim Ross on my show, and we were talking about what's going on internationally, with the growth of the independent scene internationally, what's going on in the UK. I know you spend a lot of time over there. New Japan is coming over to the United States, so there's this big movement internationally for these different organizations to start exploding. And it was interesting to me how WWE is kind of making sure they get their fingerprints on the right organizations. And I don't want to say influencing or controlling, but they're certainly making their presence felt. And my question to Jim, with two things that I want to point out. My question to Jim was, number one, does this appear to Jim, or in this case to you, Sean, that this is really WWE's way of trying to control the competition? And is there a risk of WWE dominating the international territories and putting them out of business, much the way WWE, WWF back in the day did to the regional territories when they decided to go national? Right. And you pointed out, you used the word, I was raiding talent, and I asked Jim, what's the difference between what I did, which is offering people another opportunity in a different place to work, than what Vince McMahon did when he raided the regional territories? Right. It's like raiding is in the eye of the beholder.
Well, that's just what I was going to say, depending on which point of view you're taking. The one that's getting raided or the one that's trying to acquire talent.
Right.
So, yeah. I think everything is, not everything, but so many things are just dependent on your point of view. But
absolutely.
Anyways, when I watch the Monday Night Wars documentaries on the network, and I've read a couple of I have some criticisms of them, and I've read some of yours, and they're fair, but the winner writes history. So but when I was watching it, Eric, I noticed and I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but it's just it kind of and it's not a big deal, but my version of how the whole us, Scott and Kev and I jumping to WCW is different than the version that's on the network. Yeah, not to go anyways, I'll just get right to it. On the network, they talk about DDP calling up Scott or Kevin and making the overture that way. I seem to remember being out here in L.A. recuperating from an injury and meeting with Barry Bloom about something other than wrestling, just movie stuff. And he brought up the fact that, the checkbook was was getting opened up in WCW, and some big money was being thrown around. And the first thing I thought it was get Scott on the phone. He wasn't happy, and that's my version of how it all started. Is that wrong?
No, you know what? Honestly, I've gotten to the point now, 20 or 25 years later, that I don't really think there is any more right or wrong. And I don't think, honestly, and I'm just going to speak for myself. I remember things a certain way, right. And I'm a human being, and I have flaws, and I have an ego. I have pride. I have a self-image. And I also have a 25-year-old memory. And sometimes, people, I think it's a human trait to remember things the way you choose to remember them. And I think we're all guilty of that. Right. And I will, and with that said, that caveat, established, my recollection of it was really more probably aligned with Page's, because he lived right, down the street from me. And he, whether I liked it or not, we talked all the time. Usually he talked all the time and I listened. But Paige, what I mean.
Yeah, of course.
Imagine that.
But, Paige knew where we were going, and Paige maintained relationships with people. I never did. Right. I still don't to this day. I'm not a phone friend. I talk to my own brother and sister maybe twice a year, and I love them dearly. It's
Sounds just like me, Eric.
But Paige maintained contact, and from what I remember, when things started changing, because Paige knew where I was thinking, Paige said, I don't know whether he reached out to you, whether he reached out to them, who he reached out to, but somehow, the way I recall it is, Paige really reached out to Scott first. Maybe that happened simultaneously with you. Maybe you and Scott have a conversation. I don't know. But from my perspective, that's kind of what I remembered.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, we got that all cleared up.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I just wanted to get that, because I didn't know if they had the story that way on the network, just because nobody's a fan of Barry Bloom these days, or what the deal was with it. Well, I know you're not. We talked about that on the first time I came on your show, which getting ready to. For all those that didn't hear us earlier on, when we're done with this, I'm going to roll right over into yours. But anyways, Eric, when I was on your show, well, no, I'm not going to go there yet. Sorry. When I first signed with you guys, it was after Scott and Kev. I was supposed to be the first. Do you remember? Of the three of us. Originally, at least in our group, the way we were talking, I was going to be the first one to jump. And what happened was, I went to give my 90-day notice, and my contract had already rolled over, so I was screwed. And so Kevin Scott could go, but I couldn't. And then, to shorten the story up, we had this 3-week tour of Europe before those guys came to work for you, Eric. And when we got back from that, I had to go into rehab. And that was my first rehab trip. And I came out of that, and basically Vince said, if you want to go to work for that billionaire asshole and be with your friends, that's exact words he used. Exact words. As a matter of fact, I have it on tape, believe it or not.
So clearly he wasn't referring to me.
No, well, it was all about it was still about Ted. Yeah.
It was all about Ted.
But basically he said, I'll give you a week to think about it and I'll let you go. So did you feel like you were getting damaged goods, Eric?
Not at all.
No?
Not at all.
I wouldn't blame you.
First of all, I didn't know that backstory, but when the pieces started to fall into place, and again, I've said this before, I won't spend a lot of time here because people have heard it before, but it's not like I had this master plan all laid out and, step 1, step 2, step 3, right. Step 4, and this whole NWO thing was like this giant vision in my head. A lot of it was luck and timing. I had a general idea of what I wanted to do, but I didn't have it broken down, like you would a script. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wish I could say I did, because it'd make me sound smarter than I am. And that's typically what people in the wrestling business do. But the truth is, the pieces just kind of fell into place. And once you became available, it was just like so natural. And whatever had happened previously really didn't matter to me at all. It was irrelevant to me conceptually.
Well, I guess, you know what, I guess that question makes me think that maybe I felt like damaged goods. And really, I guess I did. Because, Eric, I don't know if you remember this, but when I first came in, I couldn't even spit a sentence. I was telling these guys, I couldn't even spit a sentence out when it came time to do a promo at first when I got there. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, Eric must think what did he just pay for? You know? So, and eventually, you know, I got more confident and got my sea legs.
But you know what, Sean, if I may, and I don't mean to interrupt you on your show because that's rude, and I don't mean
please
to be
do.
rude.
This is a conversation. This isn't, you know, line of questioning.
But I think, you know, and I've said this to you, I've mentioned this to you in a different context previously, but what I saw in you, look, I had Scott Hall who could talk his ass off for as long as we could find power to the building to keep the audio going.
Yeah.
He could talk. Then I got Kevin Nash. Same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe not quite as great of a talker as Scott, in my opinion. They were different.
Different, yeah.
Hard to say one was better than the other. But if I had to put a value on one or the other, I'd give Scott a 10 plus and I'd give Kevin a 10.
Sure.
And then there was Hulk Hogan in the mix, and he could talk. So I didn't need a talker. I didn't need somebody else that was going to fight for mic time.
Sure.
What I needed was a vibe. What I needed was a look. What I needed was an energy that when people saw it, it just had that edge and that rawness, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
It had that relevant cultural vibe to it that you brought to the table. And quite honestly, if you were mute, it wouldn't have mattered because you just brought that vibe to it. And I think you underestimate yourself. And I think people that look at the success of the NWO, because it's real easy to go, oh, it was Scott Hall, it was Kevin Nash, it was Hulk Hogan, it was this, blah, 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 blah. It was a sum of all the parts. And you were just as integral of that part or of that total, or of that, the sum of that total as anybody was.
I get what you're saying. I just know how. I think I'm pretty fair with when I look back at things involving my career and how I was. I think I'm pretty fair, and I have a pretty good, like, you know, objective, about as objective as you can be when it comes to yourself. And I just think, like, you know, it wasn't my strong suit, the promos, in the ring, man, and that's where my confidence was. And so I appreciate you saying that. But
it's true, and it's like a good movie. A great movie isn't about one character's or one actor's ability.
Right.
It's about the cast and it's about the chemistry. You know, Hulk Hogan wasn't really good at flying around the ring doing a bunch of crazy stuff that made people go, "Whoa! Did you see that?" You were.
Yeah.
You know, each one of you had your own role, and I've said that before. The NWO was and is, and we'll talk about this
Later,
you know, one of the most successful, I think, ideas in wrestling, not because it was the greatest idea in the world, but because it was one of the greatest casts in the world.
Yeah, it was. And, just amazing cast. We'll get in, like, speaking of cast, later when we'll talk about the NWO later, and I want to bring that up about the cast and, you know, how big it got. But Eric, when I was on your show, you brought up you asked me about drugs and drug use, and I kind of I don't know. I didn't understand maybe the question at first when I was trying to answer it, but because I thought you were just talking about pills and all that. But we were discussing. I think what you were getting at was, you know, PEDs. It seemed like, and it made me start thinking, like, after we had the conversation. Eric, I know you guys had drug testing, and you had a drug policy in place, but man, we honestly didn't feel like you guys really had one there. I don't remember ever getting tested. Well, I know I didn't get tested. Matter of fact, when I did show up to the Georgia Mountain Center one time and there was white lab coats there, I got in the car and turned around and left. Because I'm just being honest, and I know you can't fire me now, but were you guys trying to catch people, Eric, or how serious was your drug testing from your point of view?
I'm going to be 100% honest here, and I've always tried to be honest about this. I think drug testing was something that we felt we had to do, was something that we felt if we didn't do, we were vulnerable. It's a little bit like risk management,
Right.
you know, in a big corporation. There's certain things you put into place just to make sure you don't get sued. Not that you necessarily want to, but you have to. And I think there's two things that maybe three that I can say about our drug testing. One, it was something we felt like we had to do, not something that we felt we wanted to do.
Right.
Right there is a flaw. Right there is a flaw in the system, or it indicates that there could be one. The second thing that I think is fair to say, and is not a criticism of our policy or even the WWF's policy at the time, but drug testing now versus drug testing 25 years ago, whether it's the Olympics, the NFL, or as an airline pilot, commercial airline pilot, are completely different things now than they were back then. Procedures are different. The number of companies that actually, you know, because you hire people to do it. You don't do it yourself. You don't like hire a couple doctors and put them on staff and do it yourself. You outsource it. So the companies that were outsourcing that kind of thing weren't very sophisticated. We relied on them. That's not a cop-out. That's a fact.
Sure.
We outsourced it because we didn't have a need to do it across Turner Broadcasting. It was specific to WCW. And those companies that we use really weren't very sophisticated. Therein lies another flaw. And then the third component of that was we didn't really have a discipline structure in place. And that was internally. That was our fault as management. My fault. I'll take that one. Because, A, we weren't that serious about it. I think we were trying to do it to protect ourselves.
Sure.
We just did what we felt we had to do. And there were a lot of, you could drive a truck through some of the holes in our drug policy. And that's not a secret. And I'll admit to that.
Were there, looking back, Eric, if you can remember, were there any, like, did you ever even think about, oh God, when you walk by somebody, oh my God, that guy's gassed to the gills, or hey, that guy looks like he's, you know, I mean, was it something that you ever thought about, Eric, or was it just something that, like, hey, as long as everybody's not getting in trouble and everybody's healthy, whatever. Like,
you know what? In Turner Broadcasting at that time, you know, in WCW specifically, Turner Broadcasting, while I was there, the company was really broken down into three pieces. There was the legal side of the company, there was the financial side of the company, and then there was the operational side of the company. And the legal department didn't report to me. I had there was what they call a dotted line in corporate structure. There was a dotted line, but I couldn't hire or fire.
Right.
I couldn't force. I couldn't tell people what to do. They were just kind of there doing their own thing. And they reported to the legal department in Turner Broadcasting at a whole different level than I did. Same was true in finance. I had no control, despite the urban narrative to the contrary and the Monday Night War content that's out there that suggests otherwise. Right. I didn't have control over the budget. That was something that was, you know, I had a hand in creating it, and I had to justify either falling underneath our goals or take the pat on the back for exceeding them. But the budget was allocated to me by people above me in a division of the company that had nothing to do with me. So because drug testing came under the legal side of the business, I kind of took a Switzerland approach to it because it wasn't my deal. As long as I facilitated it the way I was told I had to facilitate it, I kind of let it operate itself. So to answer your question more specifically, if I walk by some individual and I went, dude, I've been around the business for 20 years. He's gassed to the gills. He glows in the dark. Come on. It wasn't my job. Now,
hey, I'm
that
with
sounds,
you on that.
sounds horrible.
It's not.
Maybe a flaw, but the structure that I was working within at that time is what it was. And I'll use the word guilty. I was guilty of that.
I choose not to look at it that way, Eric, because I just think that if a guy's not hurting anyone and they're not a danger to anyone else, they should be able to put whatever they want in their bodies. But that's a whole nother conversation, I guess. Wow. Well, you guys want to jump in here or what?
Yeah, we have some great fan questions, actually, since you're talking about working with the talent anyway, Eric. And I don't know how much you keep abreast of the current WWE programming, but Jason Worthing said, I'm sorry. Oh, no. Daryl, Jason gives us a lot of questions. Daryl McCleary said, if you were going to rebrand WCW today, what top 5 wrestlers would you pick from any company?
Oh, well, Kenny Omega's pretty hot right now. I dig the vibe. You know, it kind of reminds me of an X-Pac. You know, a modern day X-Pac. He's just got that cool vibe to him. I've said it before. You know, guy probably thinks I'm a stalker here shortly, but something about Dolph Ziggler. I just find him so entertaining.
Yeah,
I mean, his tweets entertain me. You know, when I see him on TV, he's entertaining. The stuff that he can do in the ring, I think, is phenomenal. I think he's like a heel character. You know, there's so many great things I like about him. I like Kevin Owen because Kevin Owen to me is he's the everyday guy. I mean, he's the, you know, for viewers, and I think one of the reasons wrestling works is fans look at the characters, and yes, they're larger than life in so many ways, but deep down inside, fans look at wrestling characters and think, gosh, you know, I could be that guy. There for the grace of God go I, you know, and they fantasize about being that character. And the cool thing about a guy like Kevin Owens is he's an amazingly talented guy. I know this is going to sound like a derisive comment. I certainly don't mean it to, because I'm putting him over, but he's not that, you know, larger than life John Cena type of physique that so many people know deep down inside they could never achieve. Whereas Kevin Owens, a guy that, you know what, that could be me someday as a viewer. Sure. And I think characters like that are so important to the show. So those are the types of characters. You know, I dig Roman Reigns. I know I'm going to probably get, you know, all kinds of heat for saying that because for whatever reason, I'm in the minority on that one. But there's another guy. I just don't think we've seen everything that's below the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot there.
I don't think you're in the minority at all, Eric. I just think that the people that dislike Roman Reigns are an extremely vocal minority. I really
and that's always been the case. And I agree with you there. I think that's probably true. And I just, you know, I saw him, you know, just this morning, I saw him in a little a commercial, a public service announcement with a little girl singing something about the I'm a little teapot.
I'm a little teapot. Yeah, I saw that.
And it is, you know, he's a big, bad-looking character. He's cool as hell to look at. Yeah. But he's got that ability to be human, you know, and I just dig that in a character.
Yeah, and the thing is, Eric, you know, people might not like how he's, you know, his persona or whatever, and you know how it's being presented, but when it comes to in the ring, he's holding up his share of some excellent matches, man. And I mean, even like house shows. I was at the house show they had here Christmas week, and you know, Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens just put on a hell of a show at a house show.
So, Eric, a lot of those names you mentioned are possibly future Hall of Famers. A lot of our fans wanted us to ask you, would you like to be in the WWE Hall of Fame? Is that something that would be meaningful for you? Do you even care?
Oh, you know, I only think about that about this time of year because I get those same questions myself. I honestly, I really, this is like hard to talk about for me, but I'll do my best and I'll keep it short or try. I have two answers for that. Obviously, it's always great to be recognized by your peers, right? And I would be lying if I said that wouldn't be important to me. It wouldn't be true. But I will say that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it either. And that's because it's my own personal belief, and this doesn't have anything to do with me. This is just the way I feel about things, that I am a peripheral character. And I've said this before. If the WWE decided to have an executive wing to the Hall of Fame where people in the business side of the wrestling business were recognized, then hell yeah, I think I should be there. In fact, I think there should be a statue of me there because I think in many respects I'm responsible, or at least partially, for the success that WWE has become today. Not that I planned it that way, but I think the war, the battle, all of the things that came out of it forced WWE to grow exponentially, and I think indirectly I'm responsible for that in a very small way.
If I can disagree with you, I would think it would be it would be very direct. It's not indirectly at all, man. You're just being modest. Come on.
Well, I'm trying to be a little bit honest,
man.
but it's honest. I feel like I am responsible to a degree, and I think as an executive, I would love to be recognized for that. But to be in the same Hall of Fame with guys like, Roddy Piper and Ric Flair and all of the guys that are in there that spent years learning their craft inside of the ring, I don't feel like I'm in that neighborhood, bro. It feels a little weird to me.
Fair enough, but I mean, I don't. Let's just make one thing clear, though. You're not going to turn it down when it happens, right?
I don't know.
Oh,
First of all, I don't think
it.
First of all, I'm not holding my breath that it's going to happen. I think there's a lot of dynamics involved, and I honestly, I don't think about it. I'm not assuming it'll happen, and I won't be disappointed if it doesn't. Right. Here's my deal. If I get a ticket and get to go once a year, I'm thrilled to death, because the Hall of Fame is actually the most exciting part of WrestleMania weekend for me.
Yeah.
And it's not putting down the action in the ring and the event itself, but there's just something that's so real and emotional about the Hall of Fame that, for me personally, it's the best part.
Right on. I hear you. Eric, I want to go backwards a little bit, because sometimes I jump around. So I want to bring it back to, do you remember the first time you fired me?
I don't remember the first time. I think I remember the last time.
You think, like, okay, well.
I always remember the last thing of everything, no matter what it is.
Okay, well, anyways, I'm just going to set this. All right, there was a tag match I had with Scott Hall in Orlando, what's now the Amway Arena. And it was for Monday Nitro, live on Monday Nitro, and we're wrestling Harlem Heat, Eric. And for some ridiculous reason, and I know we're heels and everything and caught up in the moment, but on live TV, I ducked a clothesline and I gave Booker T a spin kick, took his head off. And then I looked over at Stevie in the corner and I pointed to my crotch and I said, "S my D mother effer," and right live on camera, boom, right there.
Well, there you go. Can't blame me for firing you.
That's just it. You didn't fire me, Eric. I got back and you were very cool and calm about it. You went, "Really good match." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And you went, "S my D mother effer?" And I went, oh. And I went, "Oh, I got caught up in the moment." And you didn't let me have it like an a-hole, but basically you took a lot of heat for that, Eric. I don't know if you remember, but you did. And you fined me 5 G's and I got it back in my paycheck. So, but not long after that, I'm doing an angle with Flair where I come out and I grab and pull Flair down off the apron. But when I grab him by the trunks, and the old Flair, he shows his ass thing. And I pull the trunks, his ass comes showing on TV. And I get back and you terminated my contract. Like your contract's terminated. And I couldn't understand why. And
well, I'll tell you what,
I was almost in
because
tears.
Flair's ass was so damn ugly,
right?
That was like the last straw, brother. I couldn't take that.
Well, you rehired me about 5 minutes later so I could go have my match with Dallas. But that was actually the first time I got fired. and I really should have been fired for that "S my D mother effer" thing. Oh my God. But
yeah, look, that was early on, and things were a lot different then than they are now. And ironically, because everything has progressed. Well, I don't know if progress is the right word. Everything has evolved so differently, and there's so much more latitude in so many different things. But when it comes to television, even cable television, cable television used to be the Wild West. You could get away with stuff with cable television. Now it's like, it's like NBC used to be 10 years ago.
Well, you're allowed to. You don't have FCC breathing down your neck, but you still have your in-house standards and practices.
Well, you've got advertisers, and that's what that's what I was reacting to. That's what everybody has to react to now. Is if you lose, $500,000 of the advertising because somebody decides to, rip off a live line on camera that offends advertisers, that's expensive. That's an expensive mistake. Somebody's got to be held accountable. And I was held accountable by people above me when it happened, even though I didn't do it. It's my job, my responsibility.
Yeah, and so, Eric, when eventually I was really trying to get a raise, and I'm leading up to when I actually did get fired, and people don't realize it because it was never something that was talked about, but I never actually signed a contract with WCW. I only signed a deal memo, and I was still trying to get a raise, trying to get different things, and so the deal that we had initially agreed to, I was like, I guess from your point of view, I was kind of like going back on wanting to change the deal. So that, I know you talked about that being a reason that you ended up letting me go, but it's hard for me to believe that it didn't have anything to do with putting Kevin Scott in their place.
No, it did not.
Come on, man.
No, I swear to God. If it did, I'd tell you, especially 20 some odd years later, because I got nothing to lose. And those guys are my friends, and you're my friend. So I got nothing to hide at this point in my life. But I remember that. That one I do remember because there was a third party involved, and I don't want to bury him, any more than I already have. But I'm an old school guy, and I always have been.
Yeah.
If I look at somebody and I say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and we shake hands, I'm going to do it. Whether I have a deal memo, whether I have a 45-page contract that I signed in blood, it really doesn't make any difference at all to me. It is what it is. And I'm not putting this on you, and I'm not going to put it on any named individual.
Right.
But we had a deal. We had as you put it, we had a deal memo. To me, a deal memo is the precursor to a deal. It's that 1 or 2 pages where you sign the main deal points, so a bunch of attorneys can go in a room and they can put it into a language that attorneys understand. But to me, the deal was done. And then we started paying on that deal. We started paying you according to that new deal, which included a raise. And then when I got a phone call from this third party that said, yeah, I know, we had a deal memo, and I know you've been paying them for a few months based on that deal memo, but, we want to renegotiate that. To me, I mean, honest to God, yeah. I would throw myself in front of a moving train before I would entertain that conversation.
But the reason why we thought that was how we could do things there is because that's how things happened with Scott and Kev as far as their deal getting restructured. Oh, it did, because I remember when you had to bring Brett in and at different times where they received raises. And look, Eric, I get it. Those guys were on a different level than I was as far as their worth. That's just the facts. That's how it was. And their deal was structured way different than mine was because I didn't have any leverage. I had none, and they did.
They had what they had, Sean, and I don't remember, Brooks. First of all, I didn't write those contracts. Okay,
right.
People say, Eric wrote this into a contract, Eric wrote that into a contract. I ended up approving things, but I didn't write those contracts, so therefore I don't remember all of the details. And I've heard, certain people who are still friends of mine talk about their deals in ways that I know are absolutely not true. But they tend to want to remember them that way because it helps get them over in certain ways.
Sure. Our story, we have our stories, and we tell them how we want to tell them,
including me, and I'm guilty of that as well, and I acknowledge that. But I do believe, in the context of this conversation, that Scott and Kevin had a form of favored nations, not favored nations. It didn't mean that they were the highest paid, which is what some people choose to believe, but it meant that on a scale of 1 to 10, they were guaranteed to be somewhere in the middle at least.
Right. And
so bring in a guy like Brett in would require a conversation, but you didn't have that.
Gotcha. Exactly. And that's just how there was to it. But I felt like I had busted my ass and I was in matches. This is just how I was looking at it. Mm-hmm. I was busting my ass. I was in matches. And then okay, we had, what was it? Super Brawl or Slamboree. And I was in the match with Kevin and Scott and I versus Flair, Piper, and Kevin Green. And so I was after that one, and we killed it. I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, now I'm really going to get my raise, But, I mean, so I felt like...
You mean in addition to the one that you had already got?
But no, I didn't really get that after I was there. You gave that to me before I even We started off at 200, and then you caved a little bit, and you gave me an extra 50. That was right off the bat. That's how the raise worked. So, so my raise didn't come after I was there for a while. But anyways.
You guys have a pretty good debate going on here anyway.
No, it's not a debate.
But we do need
I'm
to
just-
get into a debate before we finish up our time here with Eric.
Yeah, but crap. Well, you know what we can do? Anything else that I have to?
We could do another show next week.
Well, no. How about this? Whatever I don't talk about, whatever I don't get off my chest here, we'll just have to get it off on your show, Eric, in a little while.
Yeah, Eric has to tell his RVD story too.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say he got to tell us this RVD story.
Yeah, but first, I want to talk about something that a lot of people on social media have said they want us to talk about, and that's which one was greater. I don't know if that's a way of putting it. NWO versus
I think it was
DX.
more influential. Was the way that they put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Eric had his fans of his show vote on this on Twitter, and they decided that this is what they want to hear you guys talk about.
Yeah, and that's a tough one for me, Eric, because being that I was a part of both, you know, I feel like an integral part of both. Like I have love for for both, and I hate to you know maybe hurt anybody's feelings, but I just might. I mean, who knows?
You can,
Go for
bro.
it.
You cannot hurt my. I love you to
Not
death.
your feelings, maybe some.
You could not hurt my feelings.
No, I'm not talking about yours. I'm talking about some friends of mine that might think I'm
Tell
going to
them.
answer some
They're
of
not
these
on the show.
questions.
Screw them.
Right. And they're probably not listening either.
So you're talking DX versus NWO.
Yeah, Eric. You know, and this is something that gets, you know, debated by, you know, all the time. And where do you stand on that?
You know, I can see both sides. Not to be political or sound like a politician, but in my perspective, and this is me and my memory and my ego and my pride. I'm guilty. Okay, let's put that right out there. But NWO was new. It was fresh. It was an entirely different take on wrestling factions because it was the Four Horsemen. You know, it wasn't like it was the first time there was ever a faction, but it was the first time that you ever had badass cool heels.
Right.
It was the first time that we saw so many of the antics and the things that we saw the NWO do backstage. Where the NWO story took place in parts of the arena that nobody had ever seen on camera before. You know, it broke ground in so many different ways that I think it paved the way and created a template almost for DX. And to this day, I still see more NWO merchandise than I see DX merchandise. So from my point of view, because we got there first, and because I think it still exists in the minds of so many people today, my perspective at least is that the NWO is the greatest faction of all times in the wrestling business because of that, and therefore probably more influential in the long run.
Okay. I mean, I see some of your, I do see some of your points for sure. I mean, I am about ready to make some of your points for you, Eric, but what the hell? I
Hear
mean,
it.
did
Keep
you
them
happen,
coming, brother. Keep them coming.
did you happen to watch Saturday Night Live the other night?
I didn't, but I saw the clip. I did see the clip. That's
I mean,
a perfect example.
It kind of makes your point for you, but
Did it
Damn
become
it, I
too
wanna-
watered down though?
damn it, Eric, I want to take DX's side so bad in this. Damn it, help me out
Well,
here.
here, let me help you. Let me help you because my co-host Nick Hausman, who you're going to hear from later on, feels exactly the opposite. His response to me, and actually, you know, good thing he's in Chicago, and you know, he's a little smaller than I am. I'd smack him upside the head, but he said, "Yeah, but who cares? DX won the war." I went, okay. In the end of the day, who survives? There's also that fact.
Yeah, that's true. And here's what happened too, Eric. When I did end up finally showing up on WWE a day after WrestleMania, and I came out with my famous promo, you know, shooting my promo against you and Hulk. Anyways, and everybody talks about, oh, what a great promo that was. it was great because it was real, but even that was rough. If you go back and look at it, it was really rough around the edges. But I felt like I used, or we, I say I, but we, almost like some, judo in the situation. We used your momentum against you.
You did. And again, having been on the receiving end of that hip toss, I can tell you, and I'll say it, I'll admit it. You guys did it better. We did it first. You did it better.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, And I, this will, not to be controversial. And look, those guys are, I guess I'm not as close to the other guys in DX as I am to you, certainly. But I would say this to their face. And I'd probably get my ass kicked in the process, but I'd say it anyway. That's happened before. It's nothing new. If it wasn't for you, I don't think DX would have been successful. I don't think it would have had the edge. I don't think it would have had the attitude to be the Attitude Era represented. It needed you to get it over the way it got over. You were the catalyst. Otherwise, it would have been just another ripoff.
And Eric, that's actually when Paul called me. Coincidentally, right around the same time I got my termination letter in the mail while I was sitting at home. That's basically what he said. He told me Sean has to quit, and we want to keep this DX momentum going, and having you in it is pretty much the only way we can do it. I don't know if that's, I don't know if it would have been able to work without me or not, but that's how they felt.
I do. I'm sure it wouldn't have. It would have just felt like a ripoff. Because here's the deal. The NWO worked because it had a sense of reality. The premise of the NWO was that Scott Hall came over to WCW because he didn't like the way he was treated when he was there before, and now he was going to make everybody in WCW pay. And then Kevin Nash came along, and then you came along. That was the working premise. Disgruntled former WCW guys that went on to WWE to become big stars were now coming back to make everybody pay for not giving them the opportunities that they deserved. That's the elevator pitch, and it worked. And it was believable because of timing, because of the way we did it, because of the way some people hijacked certain aspects of certain characters.
Right.
I did that too. It worked. But conversely, you worked for DX and you were successful in DX, an important part of it, for the exact same reason, because your story, the promo you cut on me and Hogan was from the heart. It might have not been the smoothest, most articulate, political speech someone could give, but it was pure emotion based in reality, and that's what connected to the audience. And Triple H, Paul, Shawn, anybody else in DX could not have pulled that off in a believable way. They would have been acting. You weren't acting, you were reacting, and therein lies the difference.
And I appreciate you saying that, Eric. And I really think that one of the big reasons that we were able to come out on top is that we were desperate. We were way more desperate. Like, I think you guys weren't. I just think you maybe were a little bit comfortable.
I disagree with that. It was two things. One is you did catch us by surprise. There's no question about that. I didn't think, Vince would adapt that level of competitiveness where he would actually come back, as you put it, and judo us right out of our own ring, right. Use what we did so well and use it against us. I never anticipated that, number one. Number two, there were a lot of things going on behind the scenes. I'm not blaming other people or trying to, take the heat off myself. I screwed up a lot of crap. And I was thinking about that this morning, actually. If I had to do it all over again, what would I do differently? But the truth is, the company as a whole didn't want WCW to exist beginning in about 1998. I'm talking about Turner Broadcasting. They didn't want the company there to begin with. So even internally, as much as we were getting our asses judoed off by you guys and Vince McMahon, we were also getting judoed by by our corporate entity in Turner Broadcasting. There were a lot of people that were trying to pull the rug out from underneath this at the same time.
Whoa, we really have to let Eric get going to do his show now.
Do we?
I do believe, and actually, I think we wanted a little
Oh,
debate
damn it.
cliffhanger. No,
Yes.
we want to leave them wanting more. They got to tune in to Bischoff on wrestling.
I had a few more things I want.
I mean, it's
I
up
just
to,
want
it's
to
up
keep
to
on
Eric.
talking to Christy. That's all I want.
Right?
Okay.
No kidding. Well, there are some things. Oh my God, I got like a dozen things I want to. Anyways, Eric, I'll keep them on. I have notes on
Save
those.
them, brother. We'll do
Yes.
this again.
Well-
We'll see you on the flip side on my show, but
That's right.
we'll go back. We'll try this format again. If people like it and it works, we can do this once a month or however often you want to, because I dig it.
This is so far so really really good. But I'm gonna keep these notes for the other side of this when we get on your show. Sound good?
Adios.
I'll see you in a little while, Eric. Thank you so
so
much,
much,
man.
Eric.
You're the
Very
best.
much.
Bye-bye. Oh, wow. That was awesome. And we will be right back to wrap it
Damn
up
it.
so we can let Sean go and continue that
Oh, there was so
in
much
just
more.
a moment. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, Maria Menounos here. We want to let you know about my new show on SiriusXM Stars Channel 109. It's called Conversations with Maria, and it's live Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Go to conversationswithmaria.com for more info. Buzz you later.
Welcome back. We just chatted with Eric Bischoff. Sean's going to get that conversation re-rolling again in a second.
Yes.
But I have a burning question for you that I
What?
was waiting to ask throughout that. Did you say that you have a recording of Vince McMahon referring
never
to Ted
mind.
Turner as an a-hole billionaire? You can't just drop that and not tell us.
Yeah, but I'm not telling you. So
All right,
Too bad.
shut down, people. Well, then why don't
I
you
don't
go
even
ahead
know.
and...
I don't. Sometimes shit slips out of my mouth, and because we get conversational. It's not interview, man. I don't feel like I'm interviewing somebody. I'm having conversations.
Right.
So sometimes things will come out of my mouth that I shouldn't say, and that's maybe not one of them.
And you wouldn't give up Brooke Hogan either, man.
That's right.
All
well,
right,
I still
well-
have to maintain relationships with people, along with having a, compelling show.
All right, I guess that's
So,
understandable.
Jimbo,
What?
dude, I'm sorry you didn't
all
get
good.
your chance at bat.
Well, he'll come back. We'll get to talk. I have my list. We'll get to it
Oh,
eventually.
man.
It'll be fine.
Now I feel
Don't
terrible.
feel bad.
Well, that's all right. Why don't you talk about something good? I think you have a special message for some of these
I
people
do.
that you love out there,
I
right?
do.
That you were just talking about.
Before we go, I just want to say happy birthday to my beautiful daughter Caitlin. She's 22 today.
Oh, happy
Yes.
birthday, Caitlin.
Yeah, she's an amazing young lady. She was here at Christmas time, and it was awesome. And yesterday was my mother's birthday, so they're a day apart. And my mother shares a birthday with Vince Russo. Yeah, so happy belated birthday to Vince Russo as well.
One name that
yesterday.
didn't come up that we didn't
Yes.
get to
But
that either.
Caitlin, I love you so much, and I'll talk to you a little bit later today. Mwah.
Aw.
Yeah.
So sweet. We love that. Well, if you guys have questions that you want us to make sure we get in with Eric next time, make sure you follow us on all of our social media, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/xpac12360 show and on Instagram at xpac12360. And you can always follow me at Christy Reports. I appreciate it. Jimbo, where can they reach out to you?
Follow me on Twitter at Jimbo in the Booth. Check out my documentary, The Young Bucks 2 Sweet Journey, at highspots.com.
And the elusive Sean Waltman?
At the Real X-Pac on Twitter, at Real X-Pac on Instagram.
And
Yeah.
make sure you tune in to Bischoff on Wrestling, which you can also get on iTunes.
That's right.
After this.
Nice.
All right, we'll let you get to it,
Oh,
Sean.
hey, see you all next week right here on AfterBuzz TV.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Phil Svitek, Kevin Undergaro, show producer Jimbo Frank, managing editor of AfterBuzz Wrestling Christy Olson, and managing producer of AfterBuzz Wrestling Mark Bidonica, and the entire X-Pac 12360 staff, we would like to thank you for tuning in. Feel free to like us on Facebook, rate and comment on iTunes and YouTube, follow X-Pac on Twitter at TheRealXpac, and email us at xpac12360show@gmail.com. This has been a presentation of the AfterBuzz TV Network. Buzz you later!